Now, finally, for this week, Isaiah 35, another awesome chapter that we could spend all week on. But it's beautiful. And again, taking it plain as Isaiah saying what he means and meaning what he says. He's saying, even though there's going to be this land of perpetual desolation in Edom, Edom is going to be turned into this wilderness, but the wilderness of Judah and the dry land of Judah will be glad. And your desert will rejoice and blossom like the crocus. It will blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. Now, what is that talking about? Is creation actually going to sing? Well, okay, maybe. I mean, I don't want to just rule that out. But I think he's actually referencing the song in the night from chapter 30, where he says there's going to be rejoicing of the people of Israel and the survivors in Judah who are going to be singing, and that singing is actually going to relate to the restoration of the land. That's interesting. Land singing and the land responding to the song of the Lord in the mouths of the people, the survivors, who are rejoicing as the Messiah arrives in Jerusalem. That sounds super familiar to Psalm 104 and Psalm 24. All right, I'll give you those cross references, but I don't have time to go into them right now. I should add those to the notes for sure. The glory of Lebanon will be given to it, and the majesty of Carmel. Okay, so this is describing the reversal of curses that were spoken about the tribulation. This would be Isaiah 33. As the tribulation takes hold, it says the land mourns and languishes. Lebanon is confounded and withers away. Sharon is like a desert. Carmel shakes off their leaves. This is the reversal of that. Those curses of the destruction of the tribulation are going to be reversed. And there's going to be prosperity in the land again. And so there's a song of hope. And where I think even during the tribulation, you could say, Isaiah is saying, while you're even in the midst of judgment, he says, strengthen the weak hands, make firm the feeble knees, say to those who have an anxious heart, be strong and fear not, because there's going to be such deliverance and such restoration. Because of this chapter, the hope of this biblical narrative will strengthen you in times of anxiety and tribulation. Behold, your God will come with vengeance. It's not that he has come, but he will come. That's why I think this is a message of hope for those enduring the tribulation. Then the eyes of the blind will be opened. I think this is kind of a reference to the healing blessing that we talked about from chapter 33. And no inhabitant will say, I am sick, at the end of 33. I really think he's talking about physical ailments, because we've talked about spiritual blindness and spiritual deafness, but I think here we're really talking about physical ailments. Now, Micah 4 would agree with this, because in Micah 4, as the remnant are returning after the destruction of the Antichrist armies, and Edom has been desolated, and the southern part of Judah is being restored, he's saying, you're going to actually be physically healed and restored. And Micah says the same thing in Micah chapter 4. In that day, the Lord will assemble the lame and gather those who have been driven away and those who have been afflicted. Now, what led to these physical ailments? I wonder if these have to do with injuries that were incurred during the tribulation, and maybe even at the hands of their captors in captivity, which are terrible things. But you think about what the hostages in Gaza have had to endure. Now imagine the Antichrist taking the people of Israel captive and what kind of injuries they have to endure. And God has accounted for all of that. He's not missed any of it. He says, no, I'm going for everything. Every piece of whatever the Antichrist has taken from you, I'm going to restore it and heal it. And so there's going to be healing. I love that. For waters will break forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. And he's talking about the southern part of Judah. When we were looking at that map, Edom is kind of on the eastern side, and then the Negeb, or the southern part of Judah, is on the western side as we get closer to Egypt. So it's that land between Egypt and Jerusalem are really what he's talking about here. Back to the Bible on screen. And a highway will be there. Ooh, I love that. Now remember, he says the burning sand will become a pool, the thirsty ground springs of water. And even in the most desolate places where the jackals would lie down, well, grass is going to be there. And I love that. Beautiful restoration of that wilderness area between Egypt and Jerusalem. And a highway will be there. Now, we know about this highway because of Isaiah 19. Isaiah said in chapter 19, from Egypt all the way through Israel, up to the northern kingdom and into Assyria is where there's going to be this wonderful highway. And so this highway that we know about already is going to be there as a way for the remnant to return. And interestingly, it even could be Jewish refugees who sought shelter in Egypt. A highway is there for them to return, and it will be called the way of holiness. The unclean cannot pass on it. Now, interestingly about this verse, the highway of Isaiah 19 will be safe passage through southern Judah, and none apart from God's covenant will be able to access the highway. There's no threat at all. And it's similar to the city with walls of salvation. Like salvation is the barrier to access this highway. It's covenant. Those who are part of God's covenant are able to access it. And then saying there's not going to be any lions or ravenous beasts, all of these issues. The reason why he's got to actually articulate this, the reason why he mentioned this specifically is because that was one of the judgments of the tribulation. Where was that at? Oh, it's in Isaiah 30, because there's an oracle against the southern wilderness of Judah, because there's going to be trouble and anguish and serpents and lions. And anyway, he says that whole desert area is going to be overrun by ravenous beasts. And so here, that was from chapter 30. So here in 35, he's saying, no, we're going to take away all of that. No more of those ravenous beasts. The highway is going to be safe so that the redeemed may walk there. And the ransomed of the Lord will return and come to Zion with singing. There's that singing again from Isaiah 30. It will come to Zion with singing, and everlasting joy will be upon their heads. I think as they come with singing, I think that singing initiates that environmental restoration. Just as the same way as that singing initiated God's judgments against the Antichrist. And as they sing, the environment around them is being restored, which I'm thinking we have a good allusion to up here in verse 2. Anyway, I love that stuff. And they will obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. Beautiful, beautiful. And I love the reference to the ransomed. That ransomed is the same, very, very close to the word that he used for Abraham when he said, I redeemed Abraham. I called him into the covenant. And that ransomed word is, I paid the price. I bought their freedom, and I have defeated the Antichrist and accomplished their deliverance for them. But we know from the New Testament, references to this are even greater because it's the cross of Jesus. When he says, the ransomed of the Lord, the ones for whom Jesus paid with his own blood will return. And they see that, they recognize that in that day when there's that covenant renewal and national salvation. It's awesome. Just beautiful, beautiful promises. And so, and even a healing of the trauma, the sorrow and sighing of the tribulation is going to flee away. That is a very important promise because of the difficulty of the tribulation that they will have just endured. That's going to be really meaningful, actually, that happens. All right, that's going to do it for chapter 35. 36 and 37 are about how this storyline unfolds in Isaiah's generation as Hezekiah receives the word of the Lord and he cries out to God, and an angel of the Lord sovereignly strikes down the Assyrian army before they reach Jerusalem. They were invading into Israel, and then they extended into Judah, and they came to Jerusalem, but the Lord sovereignly defended Jerusalem because Isaiah heeded this word, these chapters that Isaiah wrote here. And so you can read about that in chapters 36 and 37. Really, really cool. And then we will pick up with next week. It's actually going to be some Psalms that were written during this period. They're a little bit uncertain exactly when they were written, but they were definitely written under the threat of Assyria, most likely. So next week, we're going to get with some Psalms that occurred here, and then we're going to jump into the second half of Isaiah, 40 and onward, which is also very awesome passages. So a lot to look forward to.